Good evening, Huskies. That was weak. Good evening, Huskies. All right, so glad to have all of you here. My name is Dr. William McCoy, and I am the Director of Ethics Education and Diversity Initiatives for the College of Business. I'm also, as I like to always say, a proud Husky alum. On this evening, it is such a pleasure to have you here, but we also have others from some of our other campuses joining us on tonight. I'm really proud that we are in our ethics celebration. We were recounting the history in our board meeting earlier tonight, and we've gone from Ethics Day to Ethics Week. Then we went to just Ethics Celebration. And so we want to appreciate you for being here tonight, and we also want to appreciate the dedication that NIU has toward ethics education and the curriculum that we set forth to make sure that our students graduate with more than just one class. What we try to do is take the concept of ethics education and weave it through everything that we do, from the time that you walk in as a freshman to the time you leave out, hopefully, as an MBA or a master's level student. And so we're really happy to have one of the top-notch programs, ethics programs, in the nation. You know, as the director, and I have been the director for 7 years now, and it's constantly amazing to me that I really could not do my job without the support of many of the people around me and with me. So I'd like to just take a quick moment to acknowledge some of the very important people who help belief to be what it is. And the first group that I'd kind of like to acknowledge, I'm not even sure how many of them are physically here, so I'm just simply going to ask them to stand once I acknowledge them. The group that absolutely, they act as my hands, my feet, sometimes my mouth. They are just a tremendous group of students, and without them, I just don't think we would be as good as we are. Could I ask all of the lead students, leaders in ethics and academic discipline, all of the lead students, would you please stand? Let's give them a hand. Thank you. We also have with us a few of our board members that were able to remain behind after our board meeting. I believe 2 of them are here, and I would like for Steve Hadukovich from KPMG and David Templin from Caterpillar, if you would please stand and be, I'm sorry, Sean Morrison, the newest addition to our board from KPMG. Would the 3 of them please stand? Thank you so much for serving. Last but in no way least, I really couldn't get in and out of the departments and take our curriculum to the next level without the help of faculty members. And so I'm going to ask the ones that I call to please stand, because I think I know all of them are here. Timaron from marketing. Terry Bishop from management. Pam Smith from accounting. And I intentionally did it this way because I wanted to specifically and specially acknowledge my own boss. This will be her very last belief celebration, as in February she is going on to bigger and better things in the great state of Colorado. Can we give a round of applause for all of our faculty, but especially Associate Dean Beth Toll. So we come together and we try to bring you some of the best minds that we can, some of the most professional people that we can gather to talk to you about ethics and ethics education, specifically as it pertains to business. This year, I count it a great privilege to be able to have gotten in contact through one of our faculty members, the speaker of tonight. Before I say this, before I forget, many of you were handed a little green sheet. That is your passport form. Please complete that form. However, I must warn you, if you leave this session before the speaker ends, we will not accept that form. So you do need to stay the entire presentation. All right, that's my plug. Back to the announcement. I was just talking to a particular faculty in accountancy, and she suggested this speaker on tonight. I had never really met him, but I've had the opportunity to sit and dine with him this evening, talk to him via the computer, through email, found him to be delightful, and I am very excited about some of the things, given the climate in the world and given the climate in our country, to be able to talk to someone and hear from someone who has a very, very unique perspective about ethics education and the importance of ethics education. Let's give it up for not only someone who works for the FBI, but more importantly, in my mind, someone who is another proud Husky alum, Brian Lanners.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. If you can hear me. Good. All right. Thank you, Dr. McCoy, for having me here tonight. Thank you to the College of Business for hosting. I haven't been in this room since, I think it was probably UBiz 310. Here, that's not a class anymore, is that right? I miss a lot about college. I can go on for a long time about the things I miss. Something I don't miss is having a test every other week in a class that really is 4 classes put together. It's a really good class that gets you ready for the real world, but yeah, I don't miss that 3 hours. It's really 9 hours a week, right? It's 3 days a week, 3 hours a day. So as I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, Barsima is home, right? That's where you spend most of your life. I feel like I lived here for the 5 years that I was on campus, and so being back here, having the opportunity to come speak, it just feels like I'm home. So thank you for having me. What am I going to talk about here? Try to keep you awake. A lot of different things. When Dr. McCoy asked me to come speak, a lot of different things crossed my mind that I could talk about, even just relating to ethics. There were so many cases that included some ethical dilemmas, whether it's one person or a group of people thinking together that came across some sort of dilemma that they had to unfortunately work through, and for a lot of my cases, they didn't make the best of choices. So going to go through, first off, just a little bit about my position. I don't know, it might come as a surprise to many of you that there are positions other than agents with the FBI. I didn't know that up until probably about 10 years ago. I thought it was just all agents. And so go through a little bit about my position as well as just the general case flow on an investigation that we work, a criminal investigation, and then go into a few case studies, just examples of some people that not necessarily were bad people. I mean, it's not a murderer, it's not a kidnapper, it's nothing violent. They're, what could be reasonable, decent people that found themselves in situations that led to some poor decisions and ultimately fraud. And then at the end, we'll get to some cases where there was no decency, there was really no ethical dilemma. It was just flat out just bad. So we'll save that for the end. So we'll go past this one. Talk a little bit about myself, very little, because that's not what you guys are here for. Graduated from here. Is that better? Can you guys still hear me? A little feedback there. Graduated from NIU with my bachelor's degree in accounting, 2006. Followed up a year later with master's, 2007. Did the CPA. It was the best summer of my life. I sat for that in the summer of 2007. Was still living in DeKalb, so that helped. I don't know if you guys have ever stayed here during the summer. There's not a whole lot going on. So that was a perfect situation for me to just buckle down and get that fun out of the way before starting work. Did the CFE, which is the Certified Fraud Examiner exam. Did that about a year and a half later, just kind of a hobby. I was an auditor. I wasn't doing any fraud-related work. It's just an interest that I had, and so I took the test and ultimately ended up using it quite a bit down the road once I got to the Bureau. I had 2 internships. I mean, I can't say enough about the program here. All the College of Business, all the majors, there's just so many opportunities. I can specifically speak to the accounting major, the accounting degree. I mean, that Tamara here at the time was leading up the, I don't know what you'd call it, just the internship program, and just so many opportunities that came out of that. If you're willing to work hard and and you wanted those opportunities, you wanted to get that experience before getting out in the real world, that was there. So I had 2 internships, one with the United States Government Accountability Office, used to be the General Accounting Office. They are the federal auditors. They audit federal agencies, federal programs. I had the pleasure of auditing the IRS, which how many people can say that they actually audited the IRS? And it was in a limestone cave in Kansas City, Missouri. It was like 55 degrees, I think. So my wife would tell you that that's a perfect situation for me. I'm always very warm, so being in that cave was nice. Did an internship the next summer with Miller Cooper. They're a mid-sized CPA firm based in the northern suburbs. And then after that internship, I had to decide, do I go with the GAO or with Miller Cooper? I ended up going, because I wasn't about to move, and I would have move with the GAO. I ended up going with Miller Cooper, did 3 years there, and got to the point where I knew I was not permanent in the public accounting field, and started to look at my options. And with the CFE under my belt, just an interest in fraud and forensic to begin with, I started looking around. The FBI had just posted a new position called the forensic accountant position. It's non-agent. I don't have a gun. I'm unarmed. It's the first question I always get. But kind of like the IRS, they have revenue agents and criminal agents. Revenue agents are analysts. They don't have a gun. They do the analytics on tax returns. The criminal agents, they're out there with the guns. They're doing the arrests. It's kind of the same thing. I'm not called an agent, but it's kind of the same setup with the Bureau. So started, applied in 09, 7 months later after they talked to everybody I know, did a polygraph and did everything. That's part of the top secret clearance process. Started in 2010. I've been doing it ever since. So, and I honestly could not be happier. Someone asked me when we were having dinner if I'm a lifer, and at this point, yes. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And I think by the end of this, you'll understand why I feel that way. A little bit about the Bureau, Chicago specifically. This is, all these numbers vary a little bit, but over 400 special agents. I think that just continues to grow. That was a new building in 06, and it was like half full when we moved into it. Now it's almost busting at the seams. There's 400 agents. That means there's 400 domestic sedans sitting out, in the garage, and they're just everywhere. They're just, yeah, and then they're parked amongst a bunch of evidence cars that are all broken down and have windows shot out. So there's just not a lot of space. But that's down by UIC. It's actually, Damon and Roosevelt. So if you're at the United Center and want to go take a look, some not so great areas you got to drive through, but just drive straight south and you get to Roosevelt and there's our building. 20 forensic accountants in my group in Chicago, and then over 700 other support and staff employees. We're the 4th largest office in the Bureau. The only offices that are larger, New York being the largest, Washington Field and LA, I'm not sure which is the biggest between the two of those, us, and then Houston's about to pass us in size. So pretty soon I think we will be the 5th largest office. Houston doesn't have a lake that's keeping it from growing. It just kind of keeps expanding. So just a little bit about the cases the Bureau works, and my group would work all the same cases. Anything that has money, we're going to be involved. We follow the money. Corporate fraud, on the white-collar side, various types of corporate fraud, securities fraud, healthcare, bank fraud. That healthcare fraud is huge, and it's only going to get bigger as the population ages. Organized crime, gangs and drugs, Chicago, that's a big deal that they're really trying to figure out how to fix at this point. And then on the national security side, economic espionage, as well as counterterrorism. Counterterrorism is the number one priority of the Bureau, has been since 9/11, and I don't know if that's ever going to change. That will probably always be the number one priority. We have a large number of agents assigned to just counterterrorism matters. Just breeze through how an investigation works. A lot of people ask when I give these presentations about how we find cases, how we start a case. Sometimes it's as easy as if you've heard of the city of Dixon, a walk-in saying, "Hey, I think we found something," and then it turns into the biggest municipal fraud in U.S. history, $55 million, I think. Very large case, and that was a walk-in. We have informants. We have people out there that bring in cases. If they know people that are a lot of times informants have their own issues, and if they can help us make cases, then that helps them. And we have the banking system has ways to report cases to us or irregularities that they're seeing in their accounts. So however it happens, the case gets originated, someone from the Bureau has to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office, or the prosecutors on these cases. If someone from the U.S. Attorney's Office is not willing to prosecute a case, there's no point in us investigating a case. I don't know if you guys have watched Law and Order, but it's the same thing. If the prosecutor is not interested, we're wasting our time by looking at it. Now that's on the criminal side. The national security side, that's monitoring. That's a lot of looking and watching, and not a whole lot of actual case, not a whole lot of court activity with those. So once the case is approved, we start collecting evidence, whether that be through interviews or through paper, a lot of paper. And I actually saw a picture. The lead, my first supervisor in the Bureau, his claim to fame was he was one of the lead agents on Enron. So you don't get much bigger in terms of an investigation. And so I talked to him at length about that, and he showed me some pictures of how much material there was, the amount of records, the amount of evidence that was used. It was just mind-boggling. I mean, it probably couldn't have fit in that cave I was in Kansas City. It was just an obnoxious amount of paper that they went through. But take all that, cram it down into something that's useful, and then summarize it, and we'll get to that, who we're summarizing it for. For the AUSA, the Assistant U.S. Attorney. There's one U.S. Attorney in every district. Chicago has one, and there's about 150 Assistant U.S. Attorneys that actually work the cases for the district. Once the AUSA is happy about I think that the amount of evidence we have is sufficient to charge someone, we go before the grand jury, present the case officially to them, formally to them. The grand jury, which is a group of roughly 23 people that sit in a room once a month or once a week for 18 months. So imagine getting called for jury duty and having an 18-month responsibility. So they decide if we have enough evidence, and once they typically say yes, then we go out and do our arrest. And then fast forward in the federal system, I mean, either they're taking in the criminal system, either taking a plea guilty or they go to trial and test their luck. Roughly 2% of our cases go to trial. It's extremely rare. Most good defense attorneys know that if a case has gotten to the point of the U.S. Attorney's Office saying, yes, we'll indict this, it's pretty rock solid. So it's rare that anybody tries to fight a federal case. After they're found guilty at trial or they plead guilty, their sentencing, that's based on, the judge decides everything ultimately, but it is, there are guidelines that I'll get to in a little bit that the judge follows. And asset forfeiture, I wish I could say that yacht there was something that we seized. I have looked at yachts. There was a boat once sitting at Navy Pier, one of those giant things with a helicopter on top of it. I was really hoping that we could take that, but it was underwater. Now, not literally what that term means is that the owners of it owed more to the bank than what the thing was actually worth. So unfortunately, did not get to drive a boat with a helicopter on it back to the U.S. Marshals Service. So why forensic accountants? Why does my position exist? Up until 2009, there was a different, somewhat similar position that was used essentially just for data entry, which is important. That's a big chunk of what we do, getting bank statements and other financial records into a format where they can be analyzed. Excel, something where you can manipulate the data. What my position is used for is the financial expertise. It's someone that can take something complicated, like I said, my supervisor that did Enron, take something that's very complicated and make it simple, especially for people that have limited or no financial background. A lot of agents have no financial background. Prosecutors generally don't have any financial background, and then juries almost purposely don't. We don't totally, the jury process, I'm not going to get into that. But so we understand these financial transactions and can make them simple, and then we're used to dealing with the high volume of bank records. Any auditors out there, anybody that's done an internship in auditing knows that, day one of an audit you come in and there's a table, conference room table with massive amounts of paper on it. And for a normal person, they'd kind of flip out and turn around and run. But, for an accountant, that's just, you know what's there. You just have to kind of get it separated, get it organized, be methodical about it, get through everything. And at the end of the day, you've gone through everything, and you know that what you've gone through is accurate and what you've summarized is accurate. So agents just don't have, someone asked during my dinner if there are agents that are forensic accountants. They are two separate positions. Doesn't mean that we don't have agents that have the skills that I have. They just don't have the time that I have to do the analysis that I do. They're out, they get called up for a lot of things. I have a guy I sit next to. He's out in Las Vegas right now dealing with some things. Others that, they're all over the place. And so I'm consistently in the office working through these different cases. So day in my life, at least at work, we take over the entire financial aspect of these investigations, once again, so that the agents don't have to worry about that. That includes, interactions with the U.S. Attorney's Office. That includes serving subpoenas, receiving the responses, and really just analyzing everything. This has a very short list of some of the most common things that I would be analyzing: bank statements, investment statements, mortgages, line of credit agreements, financial statements, all the fun accountant stuff, general ledgers, journal entries. Do you guys still have to take, 206, financial accounting, right? Is that still, so all that stuff. It's not common that I look at those things, because only for the more complex corporate frauds do you have to start looking at journal entries, but you'd be amazed how many times I've had to subpoena an entity for their general ledger and find different transactions. So it is useful to at least know your way around those. And auditor accountant work papers, as well as tax returns. Who wants to look at tax returns, right? That's not the most exciting thing, at least for anybody that's not a tax accountant. But there's a lot in there that you can pull, especially if you have someone relying on an application for something else, trying to make themselves look good, and you have their tax return where they're trying to make themselves look bad, and you can kind of throw the two down. And we don't charge tax fraud, but doesn't mean we can't just put it out there and make them think we do. So we would ultimately refer that to the IRS if we were going to try to charge that. But we'll bluff and get someone to talk, because a lot of these fraudsters, what they did, they've probably convinced themselves that what they did is okay. And so that's kind of a gray area. But with tax returns, they either know that their tax returns are right, or they know that they're not. And so you bring taxes up and people just kind of freak out. So we use that from time to time. So we summarize everything from these records for the prosecutor, and the numbers. The numbers that I put together are used as a foundation for the indictment, as well as for sentencing guidelines. So I'll see my cases. I'll see a news article about one of my cases, and my numbers are in the news article because the prosecutor used my numbers when she was writing up the indictment for the case. So it's kind of cool. It hasn't worn off yet. I don't know if it will. I'm almost 8 years in, to see the results of my work on WGN or whatever. That's something I don't know if that's ever going to go away, but I hope it doesn't. Grand jury testimony, like I said, I've sat in front of that group of 23 people to present my case several times. It's how many different ways can you say yes? They're all leading questions. It's a very standard process. Prosecutor asks a loaded question, you say yes, and you just a leading question, and you just kind of go through it, and that's how the grand jury then officially has all the evidence for the case. And then it's very rare. Trials are very rare, like I said before, but the ultimate purpose to my position is to testify on behalf of the government as to the results of my analysis. Yeah, it is extremely rare, but it does happen. I've been up there once. I've been within 2 days of trial several times, and defendant gets smart and realizes, okay, there's no way I'm beating this. I should take the deal now and knock 6 months off my sentence. So just a little bit comparing the two, agents and forensic accountants. For agents, some of the obvious, they're armed. They do arrests. I can go on arrests. I can't come out of the car until it's clear. Serve warrants. I can serve warrants on seizure warrants on banks. That's like you walk into a bank with the warrant and say, I'm taking this amount of money out of this account, and give you a cashier's check and you walk out. It's kind of cool. Definitely didn't do that in public accounting. They're always available. That's a big factor. Agents are always available to the federal government. Whatever the Bureau needs, agents have to provide, and so they are always available. They receive a 25% pay supplement because of that. So that helps. They spend roughly 20 weeks at the FBI Academy in Quantico. They do the classroom stuff, which I do. They do all the other fun stuff, cars, guns, all kinds of different things, which is fun to watch, and then I have to go back to my classroom and continue learning about taxes. They're halfway through Quantico, they are told where they're going to be living for the next at least 3 or 4 years. They have zero control over that. They're going there or they leave. They have no choice. So that, for people that are set on living in a certain area, probably not the job that you want to take. For full retirement, unreduced retirement, 20 years of service, 50 years old, so really, really young at that point. And a lot of people will go on to have a second career after they retire from being an agent. Like I mentioned before, agents can be on the evidence response team, where they would go in after really anything like what happened in Las Vegas, and map everything out and just collect every piece of evidence possible, all the trajectory of the bullets, just everything, absolutely everything that can be collected from that site. SWAT team, I don't have to describe that one. That's I know a few SWAT guys, and they some of the stuff they get to do is pretty cool. Physical requirements, that's different from my day. They have to pass certain, there's a variety of tests. You can Google it, and you can find out what you'd have to do. You have to pass those tests to get into the Bureau, and then you have to maintain yourself to technically be able to pass those tests throughout your 20 years. There's a little more flexibility there. But forensic accountants, unarmed, analytical tasks, like I've mentioned, very standard work schedule. For me, that works out really well. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old at home. I like to know when I'm going to be home. I like to know that generally I'm not going to be working late at night or on the weekends. That is common depending on the squad that an agent is on. So yeah, it's very predictable. 5 weeks at Quantico, all classroom-based. A job is posted, and I apply for that job, or if someone applies for a forensic accountant position, they go to that division and they stay there. There's no transferring. There's no threat of moving. You stay put. You stay where you applied. And then a little more time in, 30 years, 57 years, 30 years of service, 57 years old for full retirement. And then beyond that, we do have special education requirements, education and experience. CPA is not technically a requirement, but 9 times out of 10, that's the most well-known certification for an accountant to have, and a jury knows what a CPA is. When I get up and testify, I don't even say that I'm a CFE for a jury because they don't know. I'm going to have to explain it to them. There's no point in that. I say I'm a CPA. And then experience, generally 3 to 5 years. And I say that on the next slide where I talk about the similarities, but really you're talking bureau or forensic accountants, you need 3 to 5 years of experience because you might have to testify right away when you get on the job, and you need to have that experience to to kind of back you, to show that, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. The jury should believe, what this person is saying. So ultimately, 3 to 5 years of experience is pretty ideal for either position. And so what's the same between the two of them? Fun and work aren't usually used in the same sentence, but I remember my first day with the Bureau, sitting down with my then supervisor, him describing all the different aspects of what I'd be doing, going on searches, seizures, doing the interviews, just everything about it. And I was excited. And that excitement has continued. Yeah, not every day is fun. Not every day looks like that in the office. But there's always something going on, even if what I'm working on isn't really active. I have right now 24, 25 different cases. So usually there's always something going on to keep me busy, but there's always other stuff going on. There's always other things that are interesting, stories that people come back with from interviews, from arrests, from searches. I mean, we end up being around a lot of pretty interesting people. Interesting, I use that term lightly. It makes for a lot of good stories. And the thing that really helps is the environment at work. And I work with great people. Everybody loves what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't stay. They'd come in and they'd leave. People come in and they stay, and they do their entire 20, 30 years with the Bureau, and then they move on to something else. And I really believe that is because of what we do, the purpose behind what we do. There's something to it. There's more to it. Money matters, but being able to believe in what you do for some people is far more important. And everybody I've met so far in the Bureau is, kind of leans that way. So everybody really believes in what we do and has a passion for it, and passion for the results. People we investigate probably don't enjoy the results of our work as much, but I don't know. I like to think that it's a turning point for them, because, we'll get to it. It's not necessarily bad people, just bad decisions. They might learn from it, and then when they're out of prison, or if they're lucky enough to not go to prison, that they'll change and not go down the same road, and they've learned from it, and they can be better people. I like to believe that. We have no way of checking in on that to see if they did it. We have had a few repeat offenders, so some people definitely don't learn. But in general, just being able to believe in what you do makes a difference. So how did NIU prepare me? Really, the first thing is, in all of my analysis, I need to be able to find what's wrong. I need to know how things are supposed to look. I need to have a strong technical foundation, really the textbook stuff, right? To know, okay, these set of entries, this is how it's supposed to be, And so when you see something to the contrary, then okay, at least there's something weird here. It may or may not be fraud. It might be sloppiness, and a lot of times with journal entries, it is sloppiness. But at least I know how things should look. And NIU, between undergrad and grad school and the CPA review that I actually took here when it still existed, definitely prepared me for that aspect of the job. Strong work ethic. This brings me back to, I don't think he's in here, a business law professor I had back in the day. He was very good at using real life situations, his own real life situations, to put these legal concepts into context. And this particular one, which my wife is actually in the audience, she'll shake her head that I'm telling this story. But one of his nuggets of wisdom was, I want to get it right. It was about helping out around the house. And let's see, he said, you should set the bar low and step over. And the second part, if you're asked to do something the first time, do a kind of crappy job of it, and then you'll never be asked to do it again. I'm going to go find him because that hasn't worked for me. No. Reality is, work ethic. I mean, whether at home or on the job, whether that's public accounting, government, doesn't matter where you go. Just coming from the College of Business, you know that it's not easy to get a degree from the College of Business. I mean, it's not easy to get in. You got to stay in, and you got to work really hard to get through all the tests, the presentations, everything that is required of you to get a degree from here. So same with me. I mean, going through the accounting program, sitting here for UBIS 310, you have that work ethic, and you're really prepared for anything. That translates well into any industry, any job you might try to get into. And people skills, accountants and people skills are, once again, not usually a normal combination. Although the most extroverted people I know are actually accountants. I think that's because for our jobs, we need to talk to people. We need to ask questions. Whether you're an auditor or doing what I'm doing, you have to ask questions. It's not just asking the question, it's asking the right question. And especially in a situation where someone is not really wanting to talk to you, and maybe has some things that you're trying to get them to admit to, but they just aren't going to get there. You need to be able to relate to that person and make them feel comfortable so that they can actually come around to confess. That's always the hope. I've sat across from several people the moment that they crack, they finally kind of just let it go. And they're the first hour of the interview, they're trying to act all like they didn't do anything wrong, and they're just being kind of defensive. And then all of a sudden, you kind of start to get a little closer to them and kind of talk them around, and then they let go and they tell you everything. So it's always nice. It's always nice when it happens that way. My people skills, I was a CA. I don't know if they still call them that in the dorms here at NIU. RA, CA, community advisor. I was a CA for 2 years, and that was definitely where I developed my people skills, where it definitely enhanced them. You can imagine the different conflicts and the different problems you'd have on a floor of 50 freshmen in a residence hall. Every conflict, every conversation I had to have just helped me along that road of learning how to deal with different people of different backgrounds, different issues, and just all different situations. So where did my ethical foundation come from? I believe that your ethical foundation is a factor of, or a result of, your core values and your morals. And more than anything else, I got those from my parents, my family, my friends, the people that I was around when I was young, when I was elementary school, middle school. Fast forward, those values that I held on to, particularly along the lines of being fair, the CA job really helped me with that. If you're in a normal work, normal position, and you have to deal with the conflict, even if it's a kind of a rough result, everybody goes home at the end of the day, and you get to just go back to normal. Well, you're a CA, you live with the 50 people on the floor that you are going to be addressing conflicts with. And so if someone thinks that you're not being fair, or both think you're not being fair, you're going to have to live with that and deal with that the rest of the school year, because you're going to see them every day. So fairness, by far, that was great training for being fair. And then case studies, 2 audit classes, undergraduate and graduate, Dr. Tidrick and Dr. Sinison. The case studies we did, whether it was Enron, WorldCom, Farmore, there was a slew of other ones. That really just puts things into perspective, because until you're out in the real world, you don't know how you would react in these different situations. And so being able to go in detail into how these people made decisions really kind of makes it, gives you some insight as to how you might react, your gut instinct might be to a situation like that. The fraud triangle. I'm sure you guys, or some of you, I know accountants have definitely seen this. It's not just a textbook thing. This is very, very real. It's hard for me to think of a case, especially a white-collar case, that did not follow this to a T. For anybody that hasn't seen it before, I'll just kind of run through it. First would be the pressure. A lot of time it would be a financial pressure. Someone isn't making enough money. They can't pay bills. They can't support their spending lifestyle of themselves or their family. So there's a pressure that's pushing on them to earn more money or to somehow come up with more money. Rationalization, that would be justifying some maybe unethical decisions on how to rectify the pressure situation, kind of talking yourself out of it being an actual wrong thing to do. And then the opportunity, that's a lot of times that's poor internal controls. That's an employer that doesn't keep people or from stealing money, or that's, there's a slew of other situations, but you have the opportunity to commit the fraud. Anytime where you have all three of those, there's a risk there. I've always kind of thought that ethical views that are not supported by a strong set of core values, of morals, can fairly easily succumb to those pressures that I talked about, which can lead to the rationalization to make it seem like it's an okay thing to do. And then with the help of an opportunity at work or wherever that might be, then you're going to have fraud. This kind of just explains how what I talked about before, where not everybody, it's not all bad people. It's people that were put in bad situations and maybe didn't make the best choices in those situations. And so move on to just a few examples of those dilemmas. These are just a few cases. Unfortunately, I can't actually use real names or of people or companies because these are either cases that are in process right now or just waiting to be sentenced. And even after they're sentenced, let's just say you work at a company and you stole from that company and it ended up being an FBI case. A lot of times the U.S. Attorney's Office, to protect that victim company, they don't want to have press about someone stealing from them. The indictment, which is public, does not list the company name. It'll say Company A. So there's several that I wanted to talk about after it was all done and sentenced, but then the indictment does not have the company name, and so then it's not public, and so I cannot talk about those specifics, which my wife always wants to hear about what I do, and there's very, very little that I can actually talk about. So, first one here called Food on the Table. So this was a seafood distributor, did really well in the 90s, 2000s, distributed in the Chicago area seafood to, restaurants that most people eat at, so very well known, very good business. Well, once the economy started to crash, 07, 08, 09, that time frame, people are going to do less of what? Go out to eat at these kind of more casual dining places or just really anywhere. And so over the course of that year, the company's cash flow situation got worse and worse, and it got to the point where the company was getting close to not being able to make payroll or pay their suppliers for the seafood that they were distributing. So CEO, in roughly 2009 still, goes up to the CFO and says, all right, we got to fix this, otherwise, we're done. And so the CFO, knowing that not only is this his job if he doesn't do it because the CEO told him to do it, but also that if he doesn't do it, everybody that works there that draws a salary at this company is not going to have their salary and is not going to be able to put food on the table and support their families. And so knowing that, he tries to think of ways to get essentially kind of free cash to keep the company afloat. So he thinks of the line of credit that the company has with the bank. This line of credit is tied to the amount of assets, receivables, inventory that the company has on hand at one given time. So on a monthly basis, usually the company says, hey, here's how much we have in assets. That calculation results in how much the company can borrow from the bank on that line. Well, they were basically maxed out already on this, and so he basically decided to inflate those numbers. Very small at first, which is usually how these frauds work. They start off very small, and once again, it's kind of the justification, it's the rationalization. Oh, it's really small, it's not going to hurt anybody, it'll all wash out at the end of the day when things improve. So it starts small. So the gap between the money they needed to fund the operations and the money they could get from the bank started small and just continued to grow. And it got to the point of, I believe that one was $5 million that they were above and beyond their actual amount of assets. And they got to the point of, there's a limit on these loans that the bank sets that is just a hard limit. It doesn't matter what you calculate your assets to be, you can't go over a certain amount. And they reached that point, and they tried to get more money out of the bank, and the bank said no. So within days, they didn't have cash to pay payroll, they didn't have cash to pay their suppliers. The company goes under. And the bank is thinking, okay, it's fine. We've got, let's say $11 million of assets that we can now liquidate and try to make ourselves whole. Well, and they find out that there's only $5 million of assets to liquidate, and even those are kind of iffy whether or not they can sell them and make any money on them. So then the bank loses out, bank comes to us and tells us what happened. In this case, unfortunately, CFO was charged. He came to us after all this went down and said everything. Like, this is what happened, this is what I did. CEO told me to do this. It's a family company, he's in the family. Like, he was the one that really benefited. I got my paycheck, he owns the company. Or not owns, but is in the family that owns the company. Well, problem is, we can't just go based on him saying that CEO told him to do this. We have to have evidence to prove that the CEO told him to do this. We spent years looking for emails, looking for anything we could find that hinted that the CEO knew, that we could prove that he knew what was going on. And it just wasn't there. So ultimately, CEO was not charged. We had no evidence to charge him. CFO was charged at a year in jail, and CEO went free. So Yeah, and they were friends too, which is a lot of times how it happens. Like, oh, hey, we'll keep this between us. It'll be fine. And then when push comes to shove, yeah, you go to jail. I'm out of here. So, call this one the Band-Aid. There were a lot of these. I mean, the real estate market was booming back in 06, 07. Developers going to buy an apartment complex or a building and flip it into individual condo units and sell those units at a pretty nice profit. I saw their projections with how much they were planning on making per unit in 06, and they were going to make a lot of money, especially if the real estate market continues to improve. That's just more money. That's just more profit for them. Well, that was pre-crash, and with many of these other cases, crash happens, and then all of a sudden, the 10 units they thought they were going to sell for $400,000 now sell for $180,000 if they sell at all, because no one could get approved for loans during the crash time. And very quickly, you have cash flow problems. You still have to be paying a loan from the bank. You still have to be paying for the rehab costs that you're incurring to flip these condos, to flip these apartments to condos. And so you don't have the money to make that work. Math just doesn't work there. And so in this situation, they recruited individual investors, private investors, to put money in to the project. When I say private investors, this is not like like a small company. These are people that gave their life savings. One woman, she was a bagger at Jewel for like some crazy amount of years, like 30 years, and she invested her life savings in this project because they guaranteed 36% every year. And if it sounds too good to be true, it is. I mean, no one's going to do that. There's no comparable investment, especially after everything crashes, to that in the market. And so they raised a lot of money from individual investors. I believe, I've never asked, but my belief would be that the developer's logic is that, okay, this is a short-term thing. The real estate market can't stay down as far as it is for long. Like, it's going to come back. It's going to be a short-term thing. So let's stick a Band-Aid on it. Let's get these investors in. We're going to have to lie to them because no one would invest money into a project that is already having serious cash flow issues and is already starting to show signs of being failed. So they lie to investors to get them to put their money in. And then, as we all know, the market stays stagnant. It didn't go anywhere. And so then after enough of that, enough time goes by after these investors put their money in, and there's a new cash flow problem, because then you got these individual investors that, maybe they didn't get one or two of their interest payments, or maybe they're hearing rumors that the project is not going well. Whatever it is, they start calling up the developer and saying, hey, we're out, give us our money. One or two people do that, and you can keep the ship afloat, maybe get two other people to invest to fill their spot, but everybody starts doing that, and then everything just stops. You don't have money to pay for anything as a business anymore. And so, like I say, here, entire project comes down to a halt, and then what happens? Everybody's left empty-handed. The bank that had the loan out on the property, they could take the collateral on the loan, but it's a half-finished condo building. Banks aren't in the business, typically, of finishing a project like that and selling the units, and then to get half of what they thought they would get. This just wasn't going to happen. And then the investors, they had no recourse. They could sue them. That wasn't going to do anything. They had no money. So they were left with most or all of their life savings down the drain. In that case, the developer and there was a realtor that helped recruit people, including his own mom, to invest in this development after things had gone a little poorly. And so she, as along with everybody else, lost all of her money. So she has her son to thank for that. Next one, this was I'm going to go in a little more detail on this one, just because this is by far my biggest case to date. This is a company that provided tutoring to kids in underperforming kids in poor schools across the country. This was under the No Child Left Behind Act. This is federal money through Title I program that would go to schools to pay for tutoring to try to get these kids up to where they should be, to give them a fighting chance to, get through school and continue on and have a normal life. Well, between one school year and the next, we're back in like the 08-09 time frame, business grew rapidly. We'll get to part of why that happened soon. grew so rapidly that the company kind of losing their grip on operations. They were supposed to be sending out laptops that were tailored or customized to the individual kids' needs based on tests that they were supposed to take. That wasn't happening because that took way too long. The schools needed these things, needed these laptops so the kids could start tutoring, and they couldn't get that information loaded up quickly enough. And so allegedly they started loading these laptops with just kind of more generic software just based on the kids' grade level. They were also not getting routers out to the schools. These routers were used to electronically collect actual tutoring data from the kids' laptops and communicate it back to headquarters so that it could be used for billing purposes. They either weren't getting them out there to enough schools, or they were crap and they were breaking and just didn't work. And so when you don't have data to do billing and you want to make money, you're just going to make it up. And so they, through a few different ways, just started billing to the limit for each kid to which they sent a laptop across, like I said, on the last 1,000 schools. I mean, it was a massive, massive company. So June 2010, Insider comes in and tells us what's happening, what's been happening for the last several years. Within a month, we're searching the offices, suburb of Chicago, seizing over $1 million in cash from one of the company's bank accounts, and really starting the investigation. Wish I could say that is actually from our case, but no, I'm sure I just Googled that. There's enough pictures. I could probably find one if I look long enough of people from my office moving boxes, because that's what it is. You come out rolling a hand truck, and you've got reporters out there taking pictures of you moving boxes. So it's pretty common. So 2010, 2014 is the investigation. And things take forever. The government, I know it's a surprise to some people, but the government does not move quickly. So in this case, even though I was on it, I tried to keep things moving along as quickly as possible. It took forever. And part of that's the U.S. Attorney's Office. They are very, very conservative. They're going to make sure that things are airtight before they're willing to kind of put their stamp on something as being indictable, if that's a word. So, ton of interviews, especially on search day. I was not out there I was actually not even on the case yet when the search happened. Interviewed company employees, including some of the highest up owners, contractors that did work for the company, just anybody and everybody that was there that day. Subpoenas, this is all me. Personal, in any case, it's corporate, it's financial, it's personal financial records, it's their loans, it's their credit reports, it's their life insurance, it's literally anything and everything you can find on a person. It's kind of call it their profile. You collect everything because you never know what you might need, and because cases take so long and banks don't hold on to records indefinitely, get it when you can, and if you need it, great. If you don't, it eventually gets destroyed someday. So subpoenaed various bank accounts as well as invoices from all 160 different school districts serviced by that company. So that was the most subpoenas I've ever done in one day, and thankfully when the responses came in, it was spread across several months. So some of these responses were 5 bankers' boxes. That's one school district's response. So it was a massive amount of paper. But in all of those responses, my goal was to find all the time that they invoiced these different school districts for, and compare that time by school district to the total time that was collected by those routers from the laptops, and essentially do a comparison of the two to figure out what the overbilling was or what the potential fraud was for that school year. After all of that, the companies as well as the 2 owners were indicted. Multiple mail wire fraud counts. Really all you need is one. So when you hear of like a 15-count indictment, it's really just the prosecutor being conservative, because all you need is one count to be able to, one count can encompass all the charges, but if the defense finds one little problem with that one count and you only had that one count, then you might lose it all. So that's why they do at least 5 counts usually to make sure that even if they lose 1 or 2, they still have counts that they can hang their hat on. $33 million would be the overall fraud. Without getting too detailed, my portion was $12 million, in one school year. That was the calculation I did. I have one spreadsheet, or I have 160 spreadsheets. I opted for different spreadsheets as opposed to 160 tabs on one spreadsheet. As an accountant, I'm just too anal retentive to have that many tabs on one spreadsheet. I want to be able to click around and navigate things easily. So that was $12 million that I came up with in one school year. Assets, similar to a car we took, five luxury vehicles. I believe that one there was the Infiniti. 5 residences. I think that number is probably a little light. Condos, townhouses, actual like single-family homes. This is all the owner's stuff. There was a father and son who had all these assets that were paid for with proceeds from the fraud, from the alleged fraud. Jewelry. I think I have the ring there. That's not the actual ring, but close to it. Engagement ring it was worth I think $28,000. I mean, I can't say that that's how much I paid for the engagement ring I gave my wife, but yeah, I've actually seen it, and yeah, like I said, it looks close to that. It's just obnoxious. I mean, it looks like costume jewelry, but whatever. Life insurance cash value, and then just cash that we seized right when the search happened. So not only did they overbill, they bribed. They bribed school officials. Companies in Illinois, if they want to drum up more kids for some of their programs in, let's just say, Texas, they're not going to fly down there all the time. They don't know the kids. People at the schools know the kids and can maybe nudge them towards a certain provider. The kids can choose, or the families can choose between multiple providers for the tutoring services. And so it doesn't hurt to have someone down there that's with the school, the kids know, that's saying like, hey, this is a pretty good program. And then not only that, but having someone at the school districts that would not scrutinize the invoices as they came in because they were pretty obviously false. One particular instance, I don't think any 10-year-old is going to be doing 4 hours of tutoring on Christmas. Just probably not likely. And so how did they bribe these there was 3 school administrators and 1 state employee, so a higher up person. The 3 C's, cash, cruises, and cocaine, pretty standard. And then throw in there some strip club services, and you just really got it all. So and then there's a good chance there was a whole lot more cash, but the problem with cash is it's basically untraceable. You really, it's very tough to prove that someone handed cash over to someone else. We looked at other people's bank accounts we thought might have accepted cash bribes, looked for deposits into their accounts that were different from their salary, and it just, there was some possibility there, but if it's not the same amount or very close to it, you're kind of fighting an uphill battle at that point. Right now, the bribe takers and some of the executives, really sentencing. I say this summer, I wrote these slides a while ago. Soon, this is all happening very soon. They should be sentenced. Part 2 of the sentencing is coming up, which I'll be testifying at. Usually I don't testify at sentencings, but when someone takes a plea and says, okay, I did something wrong, but I disagree on your amount, the amount of the loss, then a lot of times that's left up to the sentencing to be fought over, and it's kind of a mini trial at sentencing, so that's what I'm getting ready for now. So stay tuned on that one. And that one has been in the news, and so when that one is complete, that one I would imagine will be in the news. So those are ethical situations. Some are kind of borderline, no ethics, but yeah, the ones coming up here, cases I've had, it's just fraud. There's really no justification for it. There's really no reason for it other than just greed, or just for fun, I guess. If you get bored with your life and want to do something fun, then you can do this. Call this one Nest Egg. So this one is a wealthy family, owned a bunch of commercial real estate all around the Chicago suburbs. I can pretty much guarantee you've been to a strip mall that's owned by, or was owned by this family. They're all over the place. They had deals with various developers a lot of this land was undeveloped, and so they had a lot of different deals to develop the land and make it just that much more valuable. One particular developer became very close with the family over the years, and especially with this family had a son who was disabled. Son had Asperger's, which is, if you guys have seen Rain Man, highly intelligent, but socially, it's just talking to this individual. I sat across from him several times. You could ask him a bank account number that's 15 digits long, and I can do, in a given case it has 10 accounts, I can at least tell you the last 4 digits of each account. I'm decent with that stuff. He knew every single account number, and these are account numbers that haven't been open. These are accounts that haven't been open since like the 70s. So very intelligent, but also just not really normally functioning within society. So he befriends, this developer befriends this son. Fast forward, the father dies, the mother is dying. Developer decides to have the mother sign papers that would make the disabled son the executor and the trustee, the executor of the will of the family and the trustee of the trust. So, tens of millions of dollars involved in those 2 pieces of paper. Mother dies very quickly afterwards, and since the son had the legal authority once she was dead to do whatever necessary with the family's money, the developer takes the son on a field trip to various bank accounts, various banks where the family had bank accounts, proceeded to consolidate, take all the money out of those accounts and put them into one account at which the son, as well as the developer, had signatory authority. And then, as you see here, within minutes, that money is out of that account and into accounts held by the developer, controlled by the developer. So what does he do with the money? Previous fraud, a previous Ponzi scheme that he was part of, he paid off some of the victims of that scheme, paid personal debts, and then just general living expenses. Just used it like it was his own. The interesting thing about this case is we were very close to trial on this, but the son, the disabled son, was one of the key witnesses. He's the one, the developer claimed this was all a loan, that the son knew, said, oh, you can use this, just pay me back, just general, claimed it was a loan from the family that the son approved. And you talk to the son, and it's a challenge because if you're not talking about numbers, it was very difficult to keep him on task and have him really kind of make sense. But when you could get him focused, he would say, yeah, no, he wasn't supposed to take that. He was supposed to use it for the project, and so that was very clear. Well, fast forward, like I said, government doesn't move quickly. Trial gets delayed numerous times, and unfortunately, the son passes away. So that's our witness. Basically, the trial is going to be the son and myself. The son to say, no, I didn't tell him he could have the money, and me up there to say, here's how he spent the money. So had to drop the charges, and at least he did go to prison for the investment fraud. That was like a 5-year, I think, that he had on that. So he didn't get away with absolutely everything. Extra income. This is a religious organization. This is a purchaser at that organization that worked there for 20 plus years, bought all kinds of stuff for trade shows and just marketing things. Over the years, his wife developed an expensive shopping habit, so much so that he needed more money. At the same time, he felt underpaid compared to other positions within the company. That might have been true. Not really sure if that was true, but that was his rationality was to maybe come up with some extra income. So the problem at this company, like I said, it was a religious company. They trusted their employees to do the right thing and to not steal from them. Therefore, internal controls were almost non-existent. So it made it very easy once he decided that, okay, there's pressure and there's rationalization. So this really could be an ethical dilemma, I guess, but I just feel like it's more fitting down here. He decided he was going to make some more money. So created a shell company, which is just a bank account, incorporated a company with the state, went to a bank, opened an account, created some invoices on his computer, which he even showed us, and sent them to his organization, the religious organization, for payment. And since there were no controls, he was able to approve every invoice that came in, and they were paid. No one else looked at them. There was no reconciliation. There was nothing. There was nothing in place to make sure that the people they were paying should be paid. So over 20 years, $1 million. And I think that's a little on the light side. I think it was closer to 2, but got away with a lot. And pretty much all of it just went to his wife's shopping. A few toys, a few jet skis and summer things, but otherwise went to the shopping habit, went to the credit card bills. He was charged. He got probation, which is common with someone. I mean, $1 million might sound like a lot, but for federal purposes, it's actually kind of low. He had no criminal history, no prior history, and so he got probation. But he is now a convicted felon federally, which I think makes it difficult to do just about anything. And had to hand over the house, had to hand over cars to pay restitution. And so I would imagine that the shopping habit had to be curtailed, or maybe she left him and found someone else to pay for her shopping. Services rendered, this is very common. I had mentioned earlier about healthcare being a huge deal right now. That's not going away anytime soon. As like I said, as the population ages and as medical services are needed more and more, it's only going to be more of a problem. This was a home health care company, meaning that if you are for some reason unable to go to the doctor comes to you. And these patients were primarily on Medicare, so the home health care company would send someone out, they'd see you, and then Medicare would be billed for those services. So business was good. Medicare might be slow to pay, but pays. And you've got a lot of patients, and patient list is always growing, and so you'd think, okay, that's a good situation to be in, just ride the tide and enjoy. But they wanted to have it be better a lot faster. Did a lot of different schemes to make more money. They billed for services not provided at all. I mean, there was just a variety. You know, they claimed that they did 5 different procedures for one patient on one visit, and the reality is that's just not possible. But Medicare's looking at it, they see the right codes and the right approvals, and they pay it. Upcoding, making something that's more, a procedure that's more minor, seem bigger, seem more major and more expensive, so they can bill more for it. I'm sure there's other types of upcoding, but that's for sure something they were doing. And they billed in general for patients that were capable of coming to the office. And so the bill rate for a home health visit, a home doctor visit, is way higher than for an office visit. And so they basically just said everybody they saw was disabled or was not able to come to the office. They were able to bill a whole lot more for their services than they otherwise should have. So this one was a whistleblower. Someone sees what's going on, and decides, okay, this is enough. They come in, tell us. And this is when things are going on currently. When we work a historical case, that's tough. You generally can't get a recording on a historical case because calling someone up out of the blue and wanting to talk about a fraud from 3 years ago is a little suspicious. You're probably not going to get a good answer out of someone if it's that stale. But in this case, where it's ongoing, where it's literally going as you speak or as the whistleblower comes in, we were able to insert undercovers into the office very easily and show that things were being billed that certainly should not have been billed for. And then recordings. This kind of fraud is so easy and so common that the people that do it tend to be very open to talk about it. And so it's extremely easy for us to record, especially when you have a whistleblower, someone that's inside, is trusted, and can just make a quick phone call. Sometimes it happens right there. You wire up their phone, they call, and the person just responds on the other side of the line and just gives everything. And that's very tough to fight at trial, which is when minimal trials happen. You can't fight a recording. Other than saying it's not me, there's really ways to disprove that generally. And so most of these things don't go to trial. And this one was the same thing. No trials. I've never been to trial or even close to a trial in a healthcare case. Last one here, augmented reality. This is a very recent one. So this was an executive at a manufacturing company doing really well. $200,000 salary, bonuses, great benefits, married, 3 kids, teenage, middle school, high school age kids. Deacon at the church, kind of the American dream. The person you'd look at and be like, oh, the family's got it made. Everything is great. They're just such nice people, and they must just be perfect. Well, it wasn't enough for him. He created a shell company, very, very much like the other case we just talked about. Created a shell company, which is just a bank account. Created some invoices, and due to not as bad of a lack of controls, but still a lack of controls at the company, was able to get himself paid more than $2 million over the course of a few years. What was weird here is no fancy houses, no fancy cars, all pretty average, no gambling, no drugs. So it's like, why Why would someone do this? They seem to have had it made, and they're going to go and commit this fraud to make more money. Well, his reason? Women. He had 2 to 3 mistresses at any one point in time. Vacations, gifts, cars, enhancements for these girls. So much so busy of a life outside of his normal life that he kept a calendar. He had his work calendar, and then he had his other calendar, which kept track of when he was seeing the different girls, what he would give them, other details about their visits, just anything that he would need to be able to keep track of his status with a given girl. A lot of his dates happened on weekdays, or pretty much all of them, on weekdays during the day. That way he doesn't have to explain to his wife where he's going for an hour and a half or longer. He leaves work and goes to a hotel and then comes back. And to put it in perspective, in a year and a half, he went to a lot of different hotels, but he loves Sybaris. He checked in at the Sybaris 142 times. Now, that might be hourly. We didn't check with Sybaris to see, if those were, what that was, but 142 charges to Sybaris. He just loves those pools, I guess. So he, record time, pled guilty, probably because he didn't want to have this come out. He didn't want to have his family find out about his lifestyle or about his fraud to support his lifestyle. And he also, this is a weird one, filed a FOIA, which is a Freedom of Information Act request on the Department of Justice, FBI, for information relating to his own case. Never seen that before, and we think the reason he did that is so that if someone else does that, he has a story already ready to go to explain away what they might find. The reality is they don't find anything. We don't give anything. Someone FOIAs us, they don't really get much. I don't know what they get, but it is basically nothing, especially on something that's current and active. They get absolutely nothing. So that was, stand-up guy. And to wrap things up, just want to give a little bit of advice. I was asked if there was any advice I had for people making their way towards graduation, people in college. First thing would be surround yourself with great people. People, like you've touched on a little bit here, people that you surround yourself with will have an effect on your values, on your morals. Maybe not in a short period of time, but over a long enough period, they are going to start to affect your decision making. And if things are bad enough, if they're for over a long enough period of time, you could find yourself down a road like some of these people in my cases. Do what makes you happy. It's very common, and especially in the accounting program, it's very common to go into public accounting or do, corporate accounting or something. There's a few different paths that are very common. And I know that works for a lot of people. That's what I ended up doing. But you ultimately have to do what makes you happy. Because if you're going to do something for 20, 30, 40 years, you better enjoy it. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable. And beyond that, money is important. You need to pay your bills, pay your mortgage. You want to have a certain lifestyle. That is important. But finding something that makes you, that you enjoy and that makes you happy is far more important. So my advice is to find what you love and then adjust your lifestyle accordingly. And then you're in good shape. You don't have to worry about money, and you love what you do when you go to work every day. That really makes it easy. And then lastly, don't rush through life. As for me as a college student, especially as an accountant, planning was my thing. I was always thinking about the next thing. I was looking at, I'm going to take the CPA review in 2.5 years, and then I'm going to take the exam. Just so far in advance, you're thinking about what you're going to do. But at the same time, you're kind of missing out on right now. And so my advice would be to just enjoy now. For you being in college, life will never get more simple than it is right now. When real life starts, you don't have those afternoon naps or late morning, early afternoon naps. You don't have those Fridays where you have literally no responsibilities and can do whatever you want all day. It's never going to be like this again. So just try to make the most of it. I would say that you only get one ride through life, so make the most of it and enjoy it. And with that, any questions? Anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
So when you mentioned like the different types of process, like being fraud and consumer fraud, is there like a certain area that you like become an expert in that you do in a forensic accountant?
It can happen. I did a lot of audits of municipalities and certain aspects within city governments, and so really anytime those cases come up in the division in Chicago, I'll get that call, and I won't necessarily go on to that case, but they'll ask questions. So you kind of do, the Bureau calls it has a lot of acronyms. This one's a SME, a subject matter expert, and it's not an official thing. It's really like word of mouth. Like, hey, you're seeing this, you don't understand it, like, I know this guy, in the division, call him. It's kind of that thing. No one really, as far as I've ever seen, gets kind of pigeonholed, like focused on only doing one violation, because honestly that gets kind of boring. It's like auditing the same company at only that company year after year. I mean, you need some variety. And so I think on purpose, they don't focus anybody on one violation in particular. So, yeah.
How was the hiring process for the FBI?
Hiring, so his question, I'll repeat the questions, I know you guys have mics. Hiring process for the FBI. So every position within the FBI requires a top secret security clearance. And so with that comes a very standard set of techniques or background, techniques, I guess. They talk to everybody friends, relatives. They don't talk to your immediate family, which is kind of, well, I guess it makes sense. What are they really going to get out of your maybe if it's your ex-wife, they might get some stuff, but your current wife or they're not really going to get much from them. So it's really every boss. So when I went through, I was 26-ish, so they went back to when I was 18. Every boss I ever had since I turned 18, they talked to. I got a lot of weird Facebook messages after that saying, like, what the hell, why'd you send the FBI to me? They talk to anybody that you've lived with or near, so all of your college roommates, so hopefully those were all good experiences. Reality is, as long as no one tells them that you're a terrorist, they're not going to care that you fought over, who had their girlfriend over on a given weekend. It's just, they're looking for the big stuff when they talk to other people. They'll go to the cities you've lived in and check with, police departments. They'll just canvass, and they'll go to a person and they'll ask, okay, are there name 2 or 3 other people that I should talk to about this person? So then they find those 3 other people, and they talk to them, and then they may ask for more. So it goes level beyond level, and so they really get it's not one agent, it's a group that do it, and so they all just write up independent reports, and at the end of all of that, someone sits down and kind of, compiles all of it, puts it all together, and then it's time for the polygraph. The FBI polygraph, I've heard percentages around 40 or 50%. Like I think 40 is what I've heard more often than not, is that 40% of the people that take the polygraph pass it. There's absolutely no way you're going to pass. I don't know how, I never Googled it because they ask you if you Googled it, passing a polygraph. That's one of the first things they do to make sure that you're not trying to beat it. I don't know how you pass it because you're sitting on all these sensors. It's all electronic now. There's no, wavy little piece of paper going. It's all on a laptop. You're sitting on sensors. You got sensors, everything, breathing, fidgeting, moisture in your hands, everything. And every question they ask, they wait about 15 seconds after they ask it, every single question, to watch your bios, your sensors, to see if they can't see what you're thinking, but they know you're thinking something. Like I did one where you're sitting there, like you answer the question, they ask you answer, and because it's silent, you start to think about your answer. And if you start to doubt yourself at all, your body reacts to that in a way that they can see on the sensors. And so the agent that did my polygraph, she's like, all right, what's going on? Waiting for the next question. No, what are you thinking about? Like, oh, I couldn't wait to get unplugged from that thing. Because they don't know what you're thinking, but they know you're thinking something. So a lot of people do get tripped up on that. Drugs, one thing that takes people off right away, marijuana, any consumption in the last 3 years, right off the bat, doesn't work. Anything other than marijuana, beyond mild experimentation, which I think is interpreted as anything beyond one time for any other drug, they're not going to do it. Of course, if you've ever sold, that's right off the bat not going to work. And then, they ask, were you a big drinker in college? Did you black out? Like, there is absolutely nothing. Do you lie to your wife? There's absolutely nothing that's not on the table for them. And they'll ask you, are you a terrorist? Are you a spy? That's the easy stuff for suitability purposes. And really, for me to be on the stand and be a witness for the government, the defense is looking for any way to poke holes in me. They want to try to, they can't usually refute the numbers. They want to try to make me look bad and insert reasonable doubt by making me look bad. Maybe the way I did a certain summary, whatever. Anything they can find, they're going to use. And so if there's any information out there that's derogatory to me, like anything that I've done that would be useful to them, they want to know that, and we actually have to present that to them. And so if I were to do something, if I'm already useless before I come into the Bureau, they're not going to let me in because they already can't use me. And if anything does happen while you're already employed, I don't know what they do. Once you've become useless, once you have that material in your history, you're pretty much, you can't testify. So you do the work and then someone else testifies to it. I've never seen that before, but that's the whole point of it. Be very thorough. So, yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How will prior military experience help us get an interview?
Will it help you in an interview? Prior military experience. Yeah, if you had a clearance, how recently that was, that could help. There are a lot of military people that come into the Bureau. It's pretty common. It won't hurt, that's for sure. How much it helps, I'm not really sure, but it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Come on, let's give it up for Mr. Lanners.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again for being an intricate part of our belief ethics celebration. There will be other speakers coming in and out of the classroom between now and the end of the semester. Please help us to welcome them and to attend their sessions. As you depart, at the back on this door, there's Richie. Wave your hand, Richie. He will collect your passport forms on that side. Zach will take them on that side. Thank you. Have a very nice evening.